The transport shuttle cut through the orange clouds of Prime like a knife through water. Inside the cockpit, the pilot, a four-armed creature with skin, looked back at his only passenger with something close to pity. "First human to attend the academy," he said. "You must be either very brave or very stupid." Did not answer. She simply watched the clouds part to reveal the massive structure below. The Galactic Military Academy spread across the mountains like a metal city. Towers reached toward the sky. Training fields stretched for miles. Ships of every size moved through the air around it. For 400 years, this place had trained the best warriors in the galaxy. 17 different species had sent their strongest, their fastest, there. The graduates of this academy became legends. Their names were carved into walls of honor across 1,000 worlds. No human name had ever been carved there. Picked up her single bag and walked to the shuttle door. She was not tall by human standards, about 5 feet 7 inches. Her body was lean and hard from years of training. Her dark hair was cut short, close to her head. Her eyes were brown and calm, showing nothing of what she felt inside. The shuttle landed on a platform where a group of officers waited, recognized the species from her studies. The tall one with 4 arms and skin was a warrior race known for their strength and their pride. The smaller one with blue scales was fast and graceful, with minds that could touch other minds. The massive one that looked like a walking mountain was the strongest species in the known galaxy. Commander stepped forward. He was 7 feet tall, with muscles that moved like snakes beneath his hide. His 4 eyes looked down with clear disappointment. "You are the human," he said. It was not a question. "Cadet, reporting as ordered." She did not bow, she did not lower her eyes. She simply stood there, meeting his gaze without fear. This seemed to annoy him. "The Coalition Council has ordered us to accept you," said. "This does not mean we wanted you. This does not mean we expect you to succeed. You will be given the same training as every other cadet. You will receive no special treatment. When you fail, you will be sent home." "Understood, Commander." "You have been assigned to Dormitory Block 9. Saw the other officers exchange looks. She did not know why, but she knew it was not good. A young officer led her through the academy grounds. The buildings were enormous, built for species much larger than humans. The gravity here was stronger than Earth, about 30% stronger. Felt it pressing down on her with every step. Her legs worked harder. Her heart beat faster. "I am Lieutenant," they said. Her voice was soft, almost musical. "I will be honest with you, human. Block 9 is where we house the weakest cadets, the ones we do not expect to graduate." "Why are you telling me this?" His large purple eyes blinked slowly. "Because I believe in honesty. The universe is cruel enough without adding lies to it." Block 9 was the oldest building in the academy, far from the main training grounds. The walls were cracked. The lights flickered. His room was small, a bed, a desk, a storage unit, and nothing else. Her roommate was already there. Tick was a species that looked something like a praying mantis from Earth, but smaller. Tick stood about 2 feet tall, with delicate limbs and large compound eyes that reflected light like jewels. They were known across the galaxy as the greatest mathematicians and scientists. They were not known for fighting. "You are the human," Tick said. The translator device on his collar turned the clicking sounds into words. "I have read your file. Your species evolved on a death world with high radiation, extreme temperature changes, and predators everywhere. Yet you are considered weak by galactic standards. This is interesting." "Nice to meet you too," said. "I am not being rude, I am being accurate." Tick climbed onto the desk, bringing their eyes closer to his level. "I have calculated your chances of survival. Would you like to know?" "Not really." "The betting pools give you 6 days before medical evacuation. Instructor has wagered 11 days. She is considered an optimist." Tick tilted their head. "I have wagered 15 days. I believe your species' famous stubbornness will extend your suffering. Set her bag on the bed. She began to unpack training clothes, a small photograph, a worn notebook. "What is that?" Tick asked, pointing to the photograph. Looked at it. The picture showed a younger version of herself, standing on a platform with a heavy bar across her shoulders. A crowd cheered behind her. A medal hung around her neck. "This is me at the World Powerlifting Championship. I was 19. "What is powerlifting?" "A sport you lift heavy things." Tick made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "You lift heavy things. For entertainment. This is why your species is considered strange." Smiled. It was a small smile, but something in it made Tick stop laughing. "On my world," said, "we have a saying. What does not kill you makes you stronger. It is not just a saying for us. It is biology. When our muscles are damaged, they rebuild themselves bigger and stronger than before. When our bones break, they heal thicker. When we push past our limits grow." "This is documented in your species file," Tick said. "But there are limits to such growth. You cannot compete with. Their base strength is beyond anything your biology can achieve." "Maybe," said. She placed the photograph on her desk where she could see it from her bed. "But I did not come here to be the strongest." "Then why did you come?" Turned to look at her small roommate. Outside the window, the alien sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that Earth had never known. "I came here because everyone said I could not. Every report, every expert, every prediction said humans do not belong in the academy. They said we are too weak, too slow, too fragile." She sat on the edge of her bed. "I want to prove them wrong." Tick was quiet for a long moment. Then they clicked something that the translator could not quite capture, an expression with no human equivalent. "This is not logical," Tick said finally. "No," agreed, "it is human." That night while the academy slept did not. She lay in her bed, feeling the heavy gravity pressing against her chest, and she thought about the months ahead. She thought about pain. She thought about failure. She thought about all the eyes that would watch her and wait for her to break. Then she closed her eyes and smiled. She could not wait to begin. The first morning began with pain. A loud alarm tore through Block 9 at 4 in the morning. Was already awake, she had barely slept. The heavy gravity made everything harder, even breathing. Her body felt like it was wrapped in invisible chains. She dressed quickly in her training uniform, a simple suit that adjusted to fit any body type. When she stepped outside, she found the other Block 9 cadets already gathering. Most of them were like Tick, their thin bodies shaking in the cold morning air. A few were a species with long necks and gentle eyes, known for their healing abilities but not their fighting skills. None of them looked at with hope. They looked at her with the same tired acceptance she saw in their own reflections. The morning run nearly killed her. The route covered 15 miles through the mountain paths around the academy. The gravity made every step feel like walking through thick mud. Within the first mile, lungs burned. By the third mile, her legs screamed for rest. She watched the other cadets, the ones from stronger species, run past her like she was standing still. A group of cadets laughed as they passed. One of them, a female with darker skin than the others, slowed down just enough to speak. "Go home, human. This place is not for prey animals." Did not answer. She could not. She needed all her breath just to keep moving. By the 5th mile, most of the Block 9 cadets had fallen behind or stopped completely. Medical drones floated down to collect them, carrying them back to the academy for treatment and rest. Did not stop. Her vision grew dark at the edges. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Every part of her body begged her to quit, to fall, to let the medical drones carry her away. She kept running. When she finally crossed the finish line, she was last place, dead last by almost 20 minutes. An instructor, a named, stood at the finish with his massive arms crossed over his chest. He was 9 feet tall and almost as wide, with skin like rough stone and eyes like deep wells. "You did not quit," he said. His voice was like thunder in a cave. Bent over, hands on her knees, gasping for air. "No." "Why?" She looked up at him. Blood vessels had burst in her eyes from the strain, making the whites turn pink. "Because quitting was not an option I brought with me." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a grunt of acknowledgement and walked away. The weeks that followed were worse. The Academy's training program was designed to push cadets to their absolute limits. For most species, this meant reaching their genetic peak, the maximum strength and speed their biology allowed. The instructors knew exactly how far each species could go. They had centuries of data. But humans were new, and humans, they soon discovered, did not follow the rules. In the strength halls, trained alongside cadets who could lift small vehicles over their heads. She started with weights that would be impressive on Earth but were laughable here. 50 kilograms, then 70, then 100. She failed constantly. Her muscles tore. Her joints swelled. The medical AI sent daily reports recommending her immediate withdrawal from the program. She refused to leave. Instead, she did something the other species did not understand. After her muscles healed, she came back stronger. Not by much, just a little bit each time, but the gains added up. This was the secret humans had discovered long ago. The body adapts to stress. Lift heavy weights and the muscles grow bigger to handle the load. Run long distances and the heart grows stronger to pump more blood. Push past the point of failure and the body rebuilds itself to fail a little further next time. Other species did not work this way. A was born with their strength potential locked in their genes. Training could help them reach that potential faster, but it could not push them beyond it. They hit a ceiling and stayed there. Humans had no ceiling. They had only walls, and walls could be broken. By the end of the first month, had doubled her starting weights. By the end of the second month, she was lifting loads that should have shattered human bones. The Academy's medical staff studied her with growing confusion. Her body was constantly damaged, constantly healing, constantly growing stronger. "This is not possible," said Doctor, the Academy's chief medical officer. He was, with gentle hands and worried eyes. "Your species' records show clear physical limits. You are exceeding them." "My species' records are based on average humans," said. "I am not average." "But the biological constraints can be trained around. We discovered this centuries ago. We call it progressive overload. Break the muscle down, let it heal, break it down again. Each time it rebuilds a little stronger." She smiled at his confusion. "On Earth, some humans can lift over 500 kilograms. Not because we evolved to, we did not, but because we refused to accept limits." Word spread through the Academy. The human had not washed out. The human was still training. The human was getting stronger. Tick watched return to their room each night, covered in sweat and barely able to walk. They watched her eat massive amounts of food. The Academy kitchens had to create a special high-calorie meal plan for her. They watched her sleep only 6 hours before rising to do it all again. "I have recalculated your chances," Tick said one evening. Was stretching her sore muscles on the floor, and the betting pools have shifted. Some are now wagering you will last through the first semester. Progress. I have also noticed something interesting. Tick's compound eyes glittered in the dim light. The other cadets have begun watching you, not with mockery anymore, with something else. Looked up what? I am not certain. Do not have a word for it, but I believe humans call it curiosity. Tick climbed down from the desk and walked closer. They want to know how far you will go. So do I, admitted. Outside, the Academy was quiet. The stronger cadets were resting, confident in their genetic gifts. The weaker cadets were nursing their wounds, accepting their limitations. Stood up and began her evening exercise routine, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches that would keep her body loose despite the heavy gravity. Tick watched in silence. "May I ask you something personal?" Tick said. "Sure." "Do you ever want to stop? Does your body not tell you to rest, to accept your place, to stop fighting against what nature made you?" Paused mid-push-up. She thought about the question seriously. "Every single day," she said finally. "Every day my body screams at me to quit. Every day I want to stop." She lowered herself back down, then pushed up again. "But I have learned something about myself. The pain is temporary. The quitting would be permanent, and I cannot live with permanent quitting." "This is illogical." "No," finished her set and sat back on her heels. "This is human. We are not the strongest or the fastest but we do not stop. We never stop. That is our gift. That is our curse. And that is why I am here." Tick said nothing more. But that night, for the first time, the small began doing their own exercises. Small movements, nothing dramatic. Just a few stretches before bed. When asked why, Tick simply clicked their mandibles in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps stubbornness is contagious," they said. "I would like to test this theory." Laughed, the first real laugh she had allowed herself since arriving. Maybe she was not alone in this place after all. 6 months had passed since arrived at the academy. In that time she had changed. Her body was harder now, packed with dense muscle that should not have existed on a human frame. Her movements were sharper, more controlled. The heavy gravity that had crushed her in those first weeks now felt almost normal. Almost. But she was still at the bottom, still in Block 9, still considered the weakest cadet in her year. That was about to change. The announcement came on a cold morning, broadcast across every screen in the academy. The annual strength trials were approaching, the most prestigious event of the year. Cadets from all species would compete to prove their physical power. There were weight classes for smaller species and a special unlimited class for the strongest of the strong. For 3 years running, the unlimited class had been won by the same cadet. Had seen him in the training halls. It was impossible not to. He was the largest in the academy, standing nearly 9 feet tall. His body was a mountain of muscle and bone, evolved on a world where the gravity was more than twice Earth's standard, where had to work for every ounce of strength, had been born with power that humans could only dream about. His record lift in last year's trials, 900 kilograms, nearly a metric ton, lifted above his head like it was nothing. The weight of a small car held in his hands while the crowd screamed his name. No cadet in academy history had ever lifted more. "You are starring," Tick observed. They were in the dining hall, eating the massive breakfast that's training required. Across the room, sat surrounded by admirers, and warriors, even a few who seemed drawn to his power. "I'm thinking," said. "About the strength trials. You cannot be serious." Tick's compound eyes widened. "The unlimited class is for perhaps a few exceptional not humans, never humans." "Why not?" "Because the minimum qualifying weight is 200 kilograms. That is already beyond what any human has lifted in competition. And that is just to qualify. The real competitors lift 3, 4, 5 times that amount." Took a bite of her food and chewed slowly. "The Earth record for a clean lift is around 260 kilograms. I've done 250 in training." Tick went very still. "You never told me this." "I don't tell anyone, but I've been tracking my progress." Pulled out her worn notebook and slid it across the table. 6 months ago, I could barely lift 100 kilograms in this gravity. Last week, I hit 250. Tick looked at the numbers. Their mathematical mind processed the data quickly. "This growth rate is unusual. You should have plateaued by now." "Maybe, but I haven't, and I think I know why." "Tell me." Leaned forward. "Humans respond to stress in ways other species don't. Our bodies are constantly adapting, constantly changing. Most species reach their peak and stay there. We keep pushing. And the harder we push, the more we grow." She tapped the notebook. I've been training in ways the Academy doesn't understand. Progressive overload, periodization, active recovery, techniques that human athletes developed over centuries. Even so, Tick said carefully, you cannot match their baseline strength is simply too high. I don't need to match them, I just need to compete. Why? What would you prove by losing? Looked across the room as if sensing her gaze, the massive turned his head. Their eyes met for a brief moment. He did not seem to recognize her. Why would he? She was nobody. A human from Block 9, not worth remembering. On Earth, said, still watching him, we have a story about a race between a rabbit and a turtle. The rabbit is faster, much faster. Everyone knows the rabbit will win. But the turtle enters the race anyway, not because it thinks it can beat the rabbit, but because refusing to try is the same as admitting defeat. And how does this story end? The turtle wins. The rabbit gets overconfident and takes a nap. The turtle just keeps moving, slow and steady, until it crosses the finish line. Tick made a clicking sound of confusion. You think we'll take a nap during the trials? Laughed, no, but I think he's never been challenged. Not really. He was born the strongest and everyone accepted it. No one ever made him wonder if his best was truly enough. She stood up, leaving her half-finished breakfast on the table. Where are you going? Tick asked. To register for the unlimited class. The registration office was a small building near the main arena. The officer inside was an older with tired eyes and scales that had faded to pale blue. He looked at its application with growing disbelief. This must be a mistake, he said. Unlimited class, you are human. I am aware of my species. The minimum lift is 200 kilograms. The medical risks alone. I understand the risks, I accept them. The officer shook his head slowly. I have to report this to the instructors. They will want to speak with you. An hour later, stood in Commander's office. Then Commander looked down at her with all four eyes, his expression unreadable. You wish to compete in the unlimited class, he said. Yes, Commander. You understand that you will almost certainly fail, possibly die. Yes, Commander. And you still wish to compete? Yes, Commander. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a harsh sound like rocks grinding together, but it was genuine. You humans, he said. I have studied your species for years. I still do not understand you. You are fragile, short-lived, constantly breaking yourselves. Yet you refuse to accept these facts. You push against the universe like children pushing against a locked door. Sometimes the door opens, said. Sometimes the child breaks their hands, leaned forward. But that is your choice to make, not mine. I will approve your registration. Felt her heart jump, but she kept her face calm. Thank you, Commander. Do not thank me. I have simply given you permission to fail publicly instead of privately. His eyes narrowed. But know this. If you embarrass the Academy, if you make humanity look like fools rushing into battles they cannot win, the consequences will extend beyond yourself. Your species is new to the coalition. Every human who comes after you will be judged by what you do here. I understand. Do you truly? Stood towering over her. This is not just your life you are gambling with. It is the future of your people among the stars. Met his gaze without flinching. Then I had better not fail. She walked out of his office and found Tick waiting in the hallway. The small was practically vibrating with anxiety. What did he say? I'm in. I'm competing in the unlimited class. Tick stared at her. You are actually doing this. You are actually going to compete against the strongest beings in the galaxy. Yes. This is insane. Probably. I have recalculated your odds of success. They are very low. Smiled. Then let's do everything we can to raise them. She had 3 months until the trials. 3 months to push her body beyond anything a human had ever achieved. 3 months to prepare for the impossible. It would not be enough. She would have to make it enough anyway. The arena was massive. 40,000 spectators filled the seats that rose in great circles toward the sky. They had come from across coalition space, and dozens of other species that could not even name. Cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the event to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Stood in the competitor's area, stretching her muscles and trying to ignore the weight of all those eyes. 3 months of preparation had changed her again. She had pushed herself harder than she thought possible, training until her body screamed for mercy, and then training more. Doctor had monitored her constantly, warning her that she was causing permanent damage, that no amount of human stubbornness could overcome biology. She had ignored him. Now here she was, about to compete in the unlimited class against beings who were born stronger than any human could ever become. The smart part of her brain knew this was foolish. The rest of her brain did not care. "You look calm," Tick said. The small had somehow obtained a seat in the competitors section, claiming to be strategic advisor. No one had questioned this, were strange, and arguing with them was usually more trouble than it was worth. "I'm not calm," admitted. "I'm terrified." Good, terror keeps the blood moving. Statistically, terrified competitors perform 7% better than calm ones. "Did you make that up?" "Yes, but it sounded helpful." Despite everything, laughed. "Thanks, Tick, for everything. Thank me after you survive." The unlimited class was the final event of the day. Watched the earlier competitions, weight classes for smaller species, speed events, combat demonstrations. There were poetry in motion, their bodies flowing like water. The end were brutal and efficient. They showed surprising resilience despite their gentle reputation. Then the unlimited class was announced, and everything changed. The roar of the crowd was deafening. This was what they had come to see. This was the main event. 20 competitors entered the arena floor. 18 were. One was a massive female named who had nearly beaten last year, and one was human. The crowd noise shifted when walked out. Confusion rippled through the stands. Whispers spread like fire. A human. In the unlimited class, was this a joke? Kept her eyes forward. She had learned to block out distractions. The only things that mattered now were the weights in her body. Stood at the center of the competitors, surrounded by his fellow. He was even more impressive up close, a wall of muscle and confidence. When his eyes found, they showed nothing. Not contempt, not curiosity, not even recognition. She was simply beneath his notice. That was fine. She would make him notice soon enough. The rules were simple. Each competitor would attempt lifts of increasing weight. Miss a lift and you were eliminated. The last one standing won, as defending champion would lift last in each round. The first weight was set at the minimum, 200 kilograms. They treated it like a joke. They lifted the bar with one arm, with no hands, with elaborate spins and flourishes that made the crowd laugh and cheer. Even the competitor lifted it easily, though with less showmanship. Then it was turn. She approached the platform. The bar sat waiting for her, 200 kilograms of metal, roughly 440 pounds. On Earth, this would be close to the world record. Here, it was the starting point. The crowd went quiet. 40,000 beings held their breath. Gripped the bar. She could feel the weight through her hands, feel the way it wanted to stay on the ground. Her muscles tensed, her mind focused. She lifted. The weight rose, her arms locked, her body stabilized. Above her head, 200 kilograms hung motionless in the air. The crowd made a sound she had never heard before, a collective gasp of surprise that echoed through the arena like a wave. Lowered the bar and stepped back. She had qualified, she was still in the competition. Across the platform was watching her now. His eyes had changed. There was something there, not respect, not yet, but attention. She had earned his attention. The weights increased. 300 kilograms, then 400. One by one, the weaker were eliminated. They were not weak by any normal standard. They were still among the strongest beings in the galaxy. But this was the unlimited class, where only the absolute best survived. Survived. Each lift was harder than the last. At 300 kilograms, she felt things strain inside her, tendons stretching, joints grinding. At 400, something in her shoulder made a sound that could not be healthy. The medical staff watched with growing alarm, waiting for the moment her body would finally break. She did not break. 500 kilograms eliminated the competitor. 600 eliminated all but 5 and the crowd had stopped laughing. They had stopped chattering. They watched in stunned silence as this human, this impossible human, continued to lift weights that should have crushed her. Instructor's voice came from beside the platform. The massive instructor was staring at her with an expression she could not read. "How are you doing this?" Wiped blood from her nose. The strain was causing small vessels to burst throughout her body. Her eyes were red, her ears were ringing, and every muscle screamed in agony. "One lift at a time," she said. "Your body cannot sustain this. The medical readings." "I know." She looked at the next weight being loaded onto the bar, 700 kilograms. "But I'm not done yet." Was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He placed one massive hand on her shoulder gently, like she was made of glass. "Whatever happens next," he said, "you have earned something today, remember that." She nodded and approached the platform. 700 kilograms, 1,540 pounds. No human in history had ever lifted such a weight. The world record on Earth was less than half this amount. Gripped the bar. Her hands were bleeding now, the skin torn despite the chalk and wraps. Her arms trembled before she even began the lift. She thought about Earth, about the years of training, the sacrifices, the people who had told her she would never be good enough. She thought about every human who would come after her, who would be judged by what she did in this moment. She pulled. The bar moved, inch by inch, fighting her every moment. Her vision went dark at the edges. Her lungs forgot how to breathe. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. The bar reached her shoulders. She caught it there, took one precious breath, and then pushed. Up, up, past the point where her muscles should have failed, past the point where her bones should have shattered, past everything science said was possible. She locked out 700 kilograms above her head. The arena was completely silent. 40,000 beings stared at her, unable to process what they were seeing. Then slowly, the spectators began to stomp their feet. It was their way of showing respect, a rhythm that built and built until the whole arena shook. Lowered the bar and stepped back. She was still standing. She was still in the competition. Only 4 competitors remained, 3 and 1 human. And the weights were still going up. The medical team surrounded the moment she stepped off the platform. "Internal bleeding," doctor said, his hands moving scanning devices over her body. "Muscle tears in 17 locations, stress fractures in both arms. Your body is destroying itself." "Can I continue?" "You should not." "Can I continue?" Doctor's gentle eyes met hers. In them, she saw fear, confusion, and something else, something that might have been wonder. "Physically, yes, for now, but each lift increases the damage. Eventually, your body will simply fail." Then it fails, stood up, pushing past the medical team, but not yet. The next weight was being loaded, 750 kilograms. 2 of the remaining failed this lift. They were strong, impossibly strong by human standards, but even strength had limits. They walked off the platform with heads lowered, defeated but not ashamed. They had done their best. Now only 3 remained. A female named Myra who had been silent throughout the competition, and Myra lifted first. Her attempt was clean, powerful, and successful. She had trained for years to challenge dominance, and today she was proving herself worthy of that challenge. Then it was turn. 750 kilograms. She could barely feel her hands anymore. Her arms hung at her sides like dead weights. Every breath sent sharp pain through her chest. She approached the bar anyway. The crowd had changed. They were no longer watching out of curiosity or mockery. They were watching because they could not look away. This human, this impossible creature, was doing something that would be talked about for generations. Gripped the bar. Her bloody hands stuck to the metal. She could feel her heartbeat in her eyes, in her teeth, in the torn muscles of her shoulders. She pulled. The bar came up, slowly, painfully, fighting her with every inch. Her spine compressed. Her knees shook. Somewhere in the stands, tick was clicking so fast that their translator gave up trying to convert the sounds. The bar reached her chest. She caught it, took a breath that felt like swallowing fire, and pushed. Time seemed to slow down. She could see every face in the crowd, the staring with mouths open, the leaning forward in their seats, the men who had mocked her on her first day now watching with 4 eyes wide. The bar rose above her head, her arms locked. 750 kilograms. She held it for 3 seconds, then let it fall. The crash echoed through the silent arena. Stood there swaying on her feet. Blood ran from her nose, her ears, her eyes. She looked like a horror, a broken thing that refused to lie down. In the competitors section was staring at her with an expression she had never seen on a face. It was not fear. It was not respect. It was something deeper, a recognition that the universe was not quite what he had thought it was. The next weight was loaded, 800 kilograms. Myra attempted it first. Her arms shook as she lifted, her muscles straining against a weight that was near her absolute limit. She got it above her head, but barely. The bar wobbled dangerously before she stabilized. Now it was turn. 800 kilograms, the weight of a small vehicle, the weight of impossibility made real. The medical team moved forward. "You cannot do this," doctor said. "Your body will not survive. Get out of my way. Please." She turned to look at him. Her red eyes held something beyond determination, beyond stubbornness. It was the fire that had driven humans to climb their highest mountains, to dive their deepest oceans, to leave their world and reach for the stars. "On my planet," she said softly, "we have a word. It does not translate well. We call it spite. It means doing something specifically because someone said you could not." She walked past him and approached the bar. The crowd held its breath. Gripped the metal. She could feel her bones grinding against each other, her muscles screaming for mercy they would not receive. She thought about every human who had ever been told they were too weak, too small, too limited. She thought about her father, who had first put a barbell in her hands when she was 12. She thought about the coaches who believed in her when no one else did. She thought about the galaxy, waiting to see what humans were truly made of. And she pulled. The bar moved. Not much, just an inch at first. Her entire body shook with the effort. Blood vessels burst in her eyes, turning them completely red. Her vision narrowed to a single point of light. The bar reached her shoulders. She caught it there, her legs nearly buckling under the weight. One breath. That was all she could manage. One breath, and then she had to push. She pushed. The bar rose. Her arms trembled so violently that the weights rattled. Her spine compressed to the point of damage. Her muscles tore, healed, and tore again in the span of seconds. But the bar kept rising. Above her head now, almost locked, almost there, just a few more inches. She locked it out. 800 kilograms hung above her head, held by human hands, human arms, human will. The arena erupted. 40,000 voices roared at once, stomped their feet hard enough to crack the stone, stood and made sounds of pure emotional overflow, even the stern, and were shouting something that might have been cheers. held the weight for 3 eternal seconds, then she let it fall. She did not fall with it. She stood there, broken in more ways than she could count, and she was still standing. Across the platform watched her with those deep well eyes. He was about to lift, his turn in the rotation. The weight would be set to his record, 900 kilograms. He would lift it, of course he would. He was born to strength, genetics designed by a harsh world. 900 kilograms was his limit, but it was still his limit. But first, he had to watch this human walk off the platform. Turned to face him. She was barely conscious now, running on nothing but will. Blood covered her face like war paint. Her body was a ruin of torn muscle and stressed bone. She smiled at him. It was a terrible smile, a beautiful smile, a smile that contained everything her species had ever been. And then she whispered 2 words that the cameras caught, that the translators broadcast to billions of watching beings across the galaxy. Your turn. Lifted his 900 kilograms. He won the competition just as everyone expected. But when they put the champion's medal around his neck, when the crowd chanted his name, when the cameras focused on his victory, all anyone could talk about was the human. The human who had lifted 800 kilograms. The human who had come in second place in the unlimited class. The human who had looked the strongest being in the galaxy in the eyes and smiled. Spent 3 weeks in the medical bay, healing from injuries that should have killed her. When she finally emerged, she found the academy transformed. Block 9 was no longer the building for failures. It had become the building where the human lived, a place of pilgrimage for cadets who wanted to see the impossible made real. Tick had calculated new odds for her survival and graduation. The numbers were much better now. And Commander had called her to his office, where he stood at his window, looking out at the academy grounds. "Do you know what you have done?" he asked without turning around. "I competed, I did not win." "No, you did something far more dangerous than winning." He turned to face her with all 4 eyes. "You gave them hope." He gestured toward the window. Below could see cadets training, not just the strong species, but the others from Block 9. They were pushing themselves harder than before, trying things they had never tried. "Hope is a weapon," continued. "The strongest weapon in the universe. You have shown them that limits are not walls, they are doors, and doors can be opened." Thought about this, is that a problem? Made that grinding sound that was in laughter. For my carefully ordered academy, yes. For the galaxy, he paused, perhaps not. He handed her a small medal, not gold or silver, but a simple iron circle with a human figure etched into its surface. "The Academy has decided to create a new award," he said, "for the competitor who best demonstrates the quality of perseverance. It will be given every year at the strength trials." Looked at the medal. "What is it called?" We debated many names. In the end, we chose a human word. "We call it the medal," met her eyes. "Your name will be remembered here. The first human to prove that sometimes the only limit that matters is the one you accept." Years later, would graduate from the academy with honors. She would serve in the Coalition fleet, then return to Earth to train the next generation of human cadets. She never won the strength trials, that remained the domain of. But she did not need to win. She had done something better. She had changed what winning meant. And every year, when the trials were held, there was a moment of silence before the unlimited class. A moment to remember the human who had lifted 800 kilograms on broken arms and smiled at a god. They say that, long after his retirement, kept a small photograph in his home. It showed a human woman with red eyes and bloody hands, holding the impossible above her head. When asked why he kept it, he would say only 2 words. "Your turn." Some challenges, it seemed, were eternal.